in around the 14th century, 14th, 15th centuries, the period that we call the Renaissance. This is where Europeans started rediscovering their sort of Greek and Roman culture, art, and writing, and so on. So the idea of Middle Ages, we're just going to look at the idea of Middle Ages or the Middle Age. So when Europeans started rediscovering Roman and Greek culture, art, literature, and so on, they were sort of coming out of the hold of the Catholic Church. And when they looked back at their history, they called it like the Middle Age. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Western Roman Empire, that period between then the Renaissance was called the Middle Age or Dark Age. Yeah, so the idea was that during the Middle Ages, Europe, Western Europe, had become sort of backward. They had lost the learning and the literature of the Romans and the Greeks. And for that period, they had become in a sort of a dark age, right? And then during the Renaissance, they rediscover the learning of the Greeks and the Romans, and they become eventually enlightened again. So the Middle Ages have sort of a negative connotation. So when we say something is medieval, it's sort of like backward or, dark, superstitious, age of superstition, and, things like that. However, what we're going to say is that the Middle Ages were not a dark age and an age of superstition and all of that. But the Middle Ages were actually the age of Islam and Islamic civilization, and we're going to argue that it was the golden age of humanity, the Islamic age, and we can call it the Islamic Millennium, right? Remember, terminology is very important and very powerful. So one of the things is, if we look at the Islamic history, from the time of the when Islam first came out of Arabia, and within about 10 years, the Islamic Caliphate had become the superpower of the world. Yeah, in the time of Sayyidina Umar, the Romans had been mostly defeated, and the Persians had been completely defeated. So the Caliphate had already become the greatest superpower in the world. So that happened by about 640, until the time when European civilization becomes more dominant. We're going to say around about 1700, That is a full 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years, where Islamic civilization is the dominant civilization in the world. Islamic civilization is leading the rest of the world in learning, in arts, in architecture, in every different aspect of culture. Islamic civilization is the leading civilization in the world for over 1,000 years. And also a large part of the world is part of that Islamic civilization. Maybe over half of the known world is under Islamic civilization. And it's over 1,000 years. So we can call that the Islamic Millennium, right? This is a term that I've coined, so it's not something you will find in history books or anything like that. But I think it's part of the importance of reclaiming our history and redefining ourselves, not being defined by others. So the West will call it the Middle Ages, but we need to call it the Islamic age or the Islamic Millennium, because that's psychologically going to be very powerful. As long as we keep calling it the Middle Ages, the age of Islamic superiority or the Middle Ages, immediately you've got a negativity there, right? I'm going to skip that point slightly, So the Middle Ages conventionally start around about 476, the fall of the Western Roman Empire.